So welcome to Animaphix streaming experience. We have a very nice guest today. We have Regina Pessoa from Portugal. He's living close to Porto, but he's in the country. She's in the countryside. She's lucky because they are living in a very nice house. And so Regina, thank you for accepting my invitation to have a speech here for the people of Animaphix streaming experience, waiting for the festival. We don't know how it will be in the festival because we don't know now what will be our future. And so Regina, you are one of the most famous animators in the world, this is sure. And but in any case, you signed not a lot of film, like a lot of important animators did, but very important because every one of this film got a big resonance in the world. So how you get started with animation? Was by chance? Was like a dream of your youth when you were a child? Whatever it is.
It was not one ambition, not a dream to make animation. It was accident, and well, it was because of this man here. Yeah. That his phone is ringing and is escaping.
At that time, there were not mobile phones, at least. No?
He doesn't want to be responsible for what I'm saying. Well, he was the responsible for me being working on animation. Actually, I never studied animation. I studied art and painting. And I was looking for a part-time job for my studies. And I heard about this small studio near the art school. And I went there, I showed my drawings. They were engaging people. And Abby said, okay, you start tomorrow. So since that day, I never left his side and I start working first on his films. That's how I start learning what is animation and this other side of animation that I didn't knew, which is the independent animation and what we call the author animation. And it was a revelation. I really didn't knew about this kind of animation. It was a surprise to see those rich visuals that I was also developing. This kind of visuals, I was developing them at art school, but they were still. But then meeting this other side of animation, I became aware that it was possible to make them move and had other dimensions to it, making films with it. So that's how I started working in animation.
So can you tell something about your first film that is called Anoite, the night? And I think is, as maybe all your films or also other animators are starting from their life, obviously, to tell stories, but is something also related to your biography, to your childhood, this Anoite, that is, for me, is a fantastic film, I have to say. Is maybe less known than the other, but it's not less good. Okay, so.
Well, actually, as I was explaining, first I start working in Abby's films, learning, figure out how people could make films and stories and make them move. And later, Abby proposes the young ones, the newcomers to the studio, to start our own animations and projects. Because at that time, luckily, Portuguese Film Commission started supporting animation and short films. So it was also a good opportunity to profit those fundings available. So Abby proposes to start developing our own ideas, which is very exciting. This possibility, make your own film, go ahead. And then I started trying to figure out something, and I realized that it's not that simple. My background was from visuals. It was from art and not from writing or storytelling. So I was in serious trouble, and so I tried to follow the basic notions we have about a script, about the storyline, like introduction, development, turning point, and conclusion, this basic structure. But the more I try to make something, less good it was, and more stuck I was. So Abi then again was very important, because he noticed that we were all lost, and he said, oh, no, stop. Don't follow these strict rules, because the more we try to follow them, the more stuck you will be. Now, just think about something that is important for you, or that makes you think about interesting images. And when he said that, it made a click in my head, and I said, "Oh, something simple. I don't know how to write stories, so maybe I can pick something that is simple. It's not really a story; it's more a setup in mise en scène." But I can work with it, and I know what I'm talking about. So I picked this basic experience, my own experience. When I was a kid, I was afraid of the dark. It's a very commonplace idea. Dozens of other authors already use it. So I was not trying to do nothing original. I was just trying to figure out if I was able to do something in animation.
But
so
technically, you did something very original, I have to say. No, technically, you find your way, yeah.
Then I found out something very important for my knowledge, for my learning process, is because it's not an original idea, it's a very commonplace idea. It's common to everyone. I mean, anyone can identify with this experience. So it makes the film universal in some way. But the experience I'm telling is my own. Only me can tell this way the story, can portray this experience with those images, because I live them. It's my own. So it make it very personal as well. So this balance between something commonplace, the subject, and personal, very personal experience, this makes, I think, the potential and the quality of my films. And it was an important learning that I had. For me, it was very important to notice that, because then I said, oh, so it's possible. I can use my own, I don't know to write amazing and original stories, fantastic, but that I can use my own little experiences and explore them visually.
So technically, how you were using your animation drawing, the drawing, how was done? The drawing was some technique particular, or what else?
Well, visually, it also started with my first film. As I said, I was coming from art school, and what I liked, I always liked rich visuals with a lot of texture, shadows, light, explore that. At school, I studied also painting, but also engraving and printing techniques. So I was fascinated by these rich visuals. So I wanted to use this also in my first film. it was the attraction, the artistic attraction that for me. So I developed the storyboard with this kind of rich textures and shadow and light. But when I finished the storyboard, it was very beautiful, but I didn't know which technique to use to make a film. So at that time, it was in the 90s, and a film had came out some years earlier that I enjoyed very much. It was Kafka by Piotr Domala. And I knew he had worked with engraving on plaster plates. I didn't knew how. It was in the 90s, so it was hard to, there was not internet and check how it worked. So I start my own research with plaster, with different kinds of inks. And finally, I managed to have a nice visual result. So I start using this animated engraving technique. And for this first film, it was directly engraved an animator under the camera, which means I had a plaster plate. I would prepare the first image, install the plaster plate under the camera, and then shoot the image, change, scratching and painting, shoot again. So all the movement would be developed in the same plate.
So and then you started the project that give you to be famous in the world, like a tragic story with happy ending. And you were using a similar technique, but sure you were developing something different to be maybe faster and also different. So what was the difference between the first film and the second? The second film is also a big co-production, so it was like something very, very strong. And with this film, you also got the crystal in Annecy in 2005 or 2006, yeah. So, and I think is the most awarded film in the history of cinema in Portugal, or something like that. Is
yes.
something great.
If that means something. But yes, well, for this film, actually, as I said, I have to come back always a little from the beginning. As I said, I started working in animation to pay my studies in art school. So when I start working in animation, I enjoy so much the work of the studio that little by little, it became very important. And I didn't want to quit, but I also wanted to finish my studies. So I was making both in parallel. I was working in the studio and finishing my studies in painting. And influenced by the work in animation, I found out that the work would develop easier and more, the creativity would be stronger if I would work on a kind of timeline, on a storyline. So for the school as well, animation had some influence, and I started developing my engravings works at school like this. An idea came to my head like a pop-up, and I enjoyed this. It was a sentence that later became the first sentence of Tragic Story with Happy Ending. And this sentence was, once upon a time, there was a little girl which heart beat faster than other people. And I enjoy very much that sentence, so I make an engraving. And then another sentence came to continue the story, and I made another engraving. And when I finished, I have the entire story. And it was my school work for engraving. But then I was working also on the night, and I finished the night. And Abby said, why you don't pick that story that you developed at school? It's so nice, and you have already a kind of graphic
Storyboard.
research.
Yeah.
Why you don't adapt it to a film? And I said, okay. And so I started adapting it to an animated film, but I didn't want to use the same technique. I mean, engraving on plaster plates under the camera, because it's very claustrophobic. We have to be in a dark room, alone, shooting, working under the camera. I didn't want to repeat that experience, but I want to keep doing engraving, animated engraving. So I developed another method so I could share the work with a small team and use traditional animation and then make the final work in engraving style. So that's what I did. I used traditional animation on paper at that time, make a photocopy of that animation in a glossy paper, kind of poster paper, and then cover with black ink, what we call here in Portugal China ink, and then scratch. And that's how the film was made.
I think that Abby is back. Pay attention.
Yes, Abby is back.
This small guy that is not talking a lot, but when he said something clever, especially to suggest you something during the process of the film. And so this was the second step. And then with Khalid the Little Vampire, it's like the computer came in your work without changing a lot the technique. So you were able to find the way to use computer to be useful for such an aesthetic that you were developing before.
Yes, for Kali, Tragic Story was my first international co-production with National Film Board of Canada and Folimage. So the experience went very well, and we repeat the same composition in production for Kali the Little Vampire. But then my producers told me, Regina, this time the technology developed a lot. There are softwares and that can be used. This time you cannot work analog. Analog drawings on paper. At the beginning, it was quite a shock for me because of my experience and my background. And at the beginning, I react a bit not very comfortable with the situation. But then, in retrospect, I thought, it was a kind of important moment. If I refuse this proposal or this challenge, I would risk to become a kind of digital analphabet. So I decided to accept the challenge and try to make the software work for me and not me for the software. I mean, the works I have watched made digitally at that time, except very few exceptions, were all very homogenic. We could see, oh, it was made on computer and not, it was made by this author. So the computer was overcoming the author signature, the author personality. And I didn't want that. I was afraid of that. So I decided my approach is to use the computer just as a tool, as I will use the plaster or as I use the scratching on paper, just like another tool. So I made my research. Luckily, I had this co-production with Canada. They have nice technicians there. So I developed a file with a kind of brush prints and the lines that I needed when I was working by hand. And based on that file, the technicians at the National Film Board designed nice digital brushes for me, so adapted to my personal visual. And with those brushes, and studying very closely the software, I passed 1 month just trying tutorials and learning everything, every tool about the software.
Which was the original software you were using and adapted to your?
No, it was even surprising, because I tried animation softwares and I didn't felt comfortable with. And then someone analyzing my drawings said, Regina, I think that the best software for you, for your visuals, for these rich visuals, it's Photoshop, that now is with a timeline. So I tried Photoshop. At the beginning, also as lost as with the other softwares, but then I have 2 lessons with a professor. And at the second lesson, a kind of click, I understood how I could use it at my service, and then I could domesticate the software and use it at my surface and relax, because it became just another tool. And maybe in the future, other tools will follow and give me some confidence to use them and not be afraid to lose my touch.
So after Khalil a Little Vampire, you okay? There are, I mean, long pause, but this is normal in your film because they are really long process to create those films. And you arrived to this the last film you did last year, Uncle Thomas Accounting for the Days. And it seems that you are, as a subject, you are back to your youth, to your when you were a kid. So it's a little bit like really connected to Anoite in some way, I think, no?
Reconnect to what?
It's connected to Anoite, to your first film, more
Somehow.
than the others in some way, no? And I know a little bit how we were developing the story, because it's really personal stories and a real character. I mean, you are talking about people that really lived close to you, your uncle, etc. And I remember you were presenting your project in Cyclic when I was in jury, and I was impressed by the quality of your drawing. The storyboard was fantastic, like, because we were using this paper that also appears on the film, that like paper made for accounting to put numbers now, and that we're using in the past. And it was so beautiful, the storyboard, that you could even immediately understand that the film should become very beautiful film as it is. So can you tell me which difference you find technically, which difference you find between Tragic Story Kali and Uncle Thomas, this third film that is,
Well,
yeah.
Each of my films was important to the next step. It's my learning process. So I explained a bit how I progressed technically. And before Uncle Thomas, the last film we just talked was Kali the Little Vampire. So I learned about the possibilities of using softwares to help our work. For Uncle Thomas, you are right, is again going back to my childhood, but now from the point of view what I am now, the adult of what I became, looking his childhood in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the previous films, somehow I was the character, that child, but in Uncle Thomas, I'm the adult regarding in retrospect is past. For the techniques, as I said, it was important to learn the computer potentials, but I also want to go back to my background, and this is a great knowledge that I learned. I have a kind of advantage because I have the past, the analog past experience, technical experience, and now I can use also the softwares. And I saw a great possibility in combining both universes, which was very important for this specific project, because it was, as you said, based on a real person that existed, my uncle. And I wanted to use his diaries. I wanted to use his calculations that you just mentioned is on this paper. It was his original calculations. I want to use his material, because if I was dedicating my film to my uncle, it was important for me also to use what he left, the simple things, the simple materials that he left and that I kept. So it was this challenge now for this film. It was how to combine what my past, the real physical objects and techniques, with the software that I learned, the new knowledge. I had this challenge, and again, it's one of my favorite steps. It's the research, the technical and graphical research. And I used the storyboard that you mentioned to figure out how to combine these different and technical universes. I mean, the real papers and objects, objects that belong to something that existed with 2D animation, and also analog with digitals. This was my challenge, and I wanted to find a way to have a coherent result, final result. And also another thing, not to lose my personal touch, that with my personal visual that I developed all these years. So the storyboard was important to kind of laboratory to experiment those things that these items that I mentioned, to check if it was possible visually to follow my ambitions, either visual, either narrative. And actually became more, in all my films, the storyboard is maybe probably the most important step.
Yeah, it is not always the case in animation, because also if the storyboard is like something you are obliged to do, a lot of animators don't use storyboard, or so. But you did in a very proper way, and I have to say that it's very it's fantastic how you do storyboard. It's something that becomes something else also, in a way. So this is the time is a little bit passing, but tell us what happened now in your life. You have something, you are starting to think something for the next years to develop? Yes?
Well,
or not? Or you are in holiday?
If the world doesn't end with this virus crisis, if we can keep working and developing our projects and our films, soon the audience can see the film I just finished in December. Not mine, but from another director, Andrea Martignoni. We made a collaboration between me and him, and it was a kind of a gentleman deal. When I was developing Uncle Thomas, I met Andreas by coincidence in South Korea in a festival. And he asked me what I was doing, and I pitched. I was starting working on Uncle Thomas, just the beginning. I have wrote the letter, and I had some visual sketches. So I pitched briefly what I was starting to do, and he was very moved. And then immediately he proposed me a deal. He would help me with the script, because it was not obvious how to make a script from the life and the very simple life of someone. And in return, later I would help him with his film. I would make the final art. And we follow this agreement. So I just finished Andreas Ika, the new film artwork last December. It will be released normally in Zagreb and Annecy. Is selected.
The title is Altutting, something like this, no?
Yes.
Yeah,
So this is,
yeah, I know.
This is my most recent work. It was this artwork for Andreas. But I have already a new project. I even already received some funding for development in Portugal. It's for writing, pre-production, writing and storyboarding. So I will start soon developing this new project. This time is a tribute to my mother.
Oh, okay.
So my mother is coming back because she was present in my first film, The Night. She's one of the characters, even if it is a stylized character. But she's there also in another way, because the song, there is a lullaby. The song is my mother who sings the song. So now she will come back because late in life, well, she was already a very old lady, almost 80. And my mother had schizophrenia. So she was this different person, and somehow it's the reason why my characters are always a bit outsiders. It's very influenced by my mother. So I want to pay her a tribute. And visually, I found out, as I said, already a very old lady, almost 80. She had all people's problems, mobility, arthrosis. She couldn't walk anymore at one point. And she was always a lot of energy because of her mental illness, and she became very frustrated, and I was trying to figure out activities for her. And then I found out that she could draw, and she started drawing on my iPad with her finger. Wow. And she made a gallery of heads, portraits, but very naive, but very strong. And they are so strong that I want to use them in my film.
It's a great idea, Regina. I'd like to finish with this vision of your mother drawing simple but not simple. I mean, drawing things on your iPad. So thank you, Regina. I want to remember to people who are following us that last year with Uncle Thomas Accounting for the Days, you got the audience prize in Animaphix. So people who saw the film have to remember, because they voted for your film, and probably you will give us some special contents with some interview or whatever you have, and we will have also the link for the previous film. So thank you very much for accepting to be my guest in this Animaphix streaming experience series. And we say ciao to Abby as well.
Abby!
Ciao Abby! Ciao caro! Ciao piccolino! See you soon!